and welcome back to part 2 tonight of our health seminar. If you missed last night, don't worry. You can receive the link to the YouTube video that is all being put up on YouTube. So make sure if you missed last night's meeting to get the link from Chris, and he will share that with you. Welcome back from, Pastor Ernie?
Yeah, leave us your email so we can get that link to you.
Yes, leave your email and we'll send that to you. In the back table, we have wonderful health magazines. One called Radiant Living, the 8 Simple Steps to Health and Happiness. Does this have something to do with New Start, Dr. Snyder?
Oh, yes, those are your 8 natural
Exactly.
doctors.
So you can take this home and learn them and practice and implement these into your life. The other one is, do you want a vibrant life? Of course. And did you know that this is the oldest health magazine in America? I just found that out too. It started in 1885. So it is an amazing health magazine. And if it started way back then, it must have started with sound, really solid principles on health. Let's welcome back Dr. Snyder for round 2.
All right, thank you very much. Glad to be here. Glad you're all here. And we'll get started here. Let me get rid of this cord. There we go. And what did I do here? There we go. All right, so tonight's topic, we're going to continue on from where we started last night. We're talking about how to optimize your health. Just a quick review. Last night we looked at the things that we have in common between non-communicable diseases and infectious diseases and how we could go about preventing both of them. And so what we learned about that by boosting our immune system, we could improve our health, reduce our chances of becoming infected. And if we do become infected with something such as COVID, we mostly focus on that, or monkeypox, or whatever the newest virus is these days, our immune system is strong enough that we can fight it naturally without getting critically ill, ending up in the ICU, and dying. So we talked about the 8 natural doctors last night. These are the 8 factors that lead to good health. Nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God is the acronym New Start. And so all you have to do is remember New Start, and then you can kind of think about what each of those might mean. Eventually, you'll get it memorized. So New Start. And what I want to focus on tonight is kind of the difference between therapeutics and prevention. Because we have a gigantic healthcare system in the United States that focuses on therapeutics. People get sick, they go to the doctor writes them a prescription for medication, they take the medication sometimes works, sometimes makes them sicker, sometimes gives them other symptoms that they don't know what's going on, and so much better to try to prevent disease. And so that's been the focus of last night and tonight. We want to try to prevent getting sick. And so as we look at that, we are what we eat, and we talked a little bit about that last night. We know that Western societies, we went through the graph last night where we saw the infectious disease rate drop off and the non-communicable or lifestyle diseases increase. So we saw that transition, epidemiological transition, and how that has happened. People are living much longer, but now we're seeing diseases that we never saw 100 years ago. And why is that? Well, when we look at the common themes, and we looked at the common things about those that lived to be 100 last year, they lived very healthful lives, plant-based, family strong, some kind of spirituality, and they're hardworking people. It tends to lend to longer lives. Well, in the Western societies, where we are living longer, and we talked about the average age, 77, 78, yet in these other places where they don't eat like Westerners, they live to be over 100 pretty routinely. So they have what's in common, hot foods that are high in fats, things like meat, cheese, eggs, dairy products, and so forth. And so the question is that really how we're supposed to eat? Because in the beginning, that's not how it was. And we went over this last night. In the beginning, God gave us every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree which is in the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be your meat. And so that's what God designed us to eat. It was a perfect diet for a perfect creation. And there was no disease. There was no suffering at that time, not until sin came into the world. And we were told also, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat. And it wasn't until after sin came in that the herb of the field was added. The herb of the field is vegetables. And so that's the amended diet. It's all plant-based. There's no animals. When God gave man dominion, it didn't give him license to kill everything that walked upon the face of the earth to eat it. That's not what dominion means. The word means to take care of, to care for, to be a caretaker. And as we consider that, we might consider the first human being having been exposed to all those animals, naming the animals, knowing the animals, being friends with the animals. And so that was not the purpose. So the health text I have for you today is the same as last time. I used to have these printed on my business cards. Beloved, I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. It's taken from 3 John verse 2. This is the School of Medicine that I graduated from in Loma Linda, California. And there was a Dr. Lamont Murdoch who was on faculty there. And he used to say, faulty genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. Oh, what did he mean by that? Well, we all have a genetic predisposition to something, some kind of disease, whether it's heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, whatever the situation may be, cancer can run in families. We have a genetic predisposition. He maintained that it was lifestyle that pulled the trigger. In other words, if you fell into the lifestyle that promotes disease, you're going to bring out that genetic predisposition. But he emphasized that we can avoid that. Just because we have a genetic predisposition to something, something that runs in our family, it doesn't mean necessarily that we have to get the disease. We can avoid it. I noticed more lately, Dr. Esselstyn is using the same quote, genetics loads the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. And Dr. Oz has been quoted using the same phrase. So the standard American diet, shortened is SAD. It's very sad. It's a sad diet. It contains a lot of refined foods, high fat content, 40 to 50%, and high in simple carbohydrates and low in fiber. And I think this is a good place to take a pause. I was going to do this right at the beginning. I almost forgot, but I want to introduce Yoli. And Yoli Merklin, and what she's going to do, since we're talking about, there's a slide with simple carbs here, I wanted to do a little experiment, and she actually gave me the idea to do this, so I think it's great. I'll let her explain what we're going to do.
Perfect.
Here, why don't you just take this for a minute.
All right, here we go.
And then we'll continue.
Woo. Usually, I have 4 children, so talking loudly is not something I struggle with, but I get it. We have to have it for the camera, for the audio. So if I'm going to have Colleen and Lydia pass out, we're going to do a little experiment with raisins and with a cracker. And we're going to pass out the little items, and then I want you to hold on to them, and I'm going to give you instructions on what we're going to do next. But really what we're trying to do is slow down. We want to slow down. We want to reconnect with what we're eating, and so we're going to do something called mindful eating. I don't know about you guys, but like Dr. Snyder, I work in the medical field. I'm a office manager, but I also do patient education, and I have experienced the rush, right? We don't have time to stop and eat, or we're grabbing something on the go and we're keep going. And it's always in a hurry. And then we come home and it's time to quickly whip up dinner. And then in the middle of dinner, maybe we're so tired of just, the day's work that we sit in front of the TV and we're eating in front of the TV and we're just not connecting with our food. And one of the things that I've experienced with my patients has been when we're introducing more vegetables, more grains, the common thread is, but there's no flavor, right? I'm sure you've heard it. It's so bland.
What do you eat?
Right, what do you eat? There's only so many salads that I can endure. The lettuce all tastes the same. And my response is, have you stopped, taken a breath, and actually tasted what is in front of you? Have you looked at it? Have you just enjoyed what you're seeing? Because all of our senses have to be a part of our meal. We need to see it. We need to smell it. We need to really enjoy it. But if we're in front of the TV, it's mindless eating, right? We're just shoving our mouths, and the next thing we know, we've finished the bags of chips. We're eating things that are not healthy, but we're just eating because it's this action. And before you know it, you're just not realizing how much you've consumed. So this is a fun way for us to kind of slow down, take a deep breath, and kind of reconnect with food. So I picked raisins because most of us have eaten raisins, right? We all know what raisins are. They're small, they're tiny, but they pack a punch. And then I'm going to actually have Dr. Snyder walk us through the cracker process. So once everybody has it, I think we're missing one up here up front. It's coming towards you. No, we all have to participate. It's part of the fun thing. So I want you to, as you're holding your plate, to take a look at the raisin that's there. Just take a look. Take a deep breath and just connect with a raisin, right? It's small, it's tiny. Think of the life it had. It used to be a grape, right? It used to grow on a vine. It had a happy little sun life. And as we're getting yours, I want you to pick up the raisin and stick it between your index finger and your thumb. And we're going to play with our food. I want you to squish it. Just squish it. What does it feel like? You ever squished a raisin before? Just for fun. Squish the raisin. Think of what you're feeling, the texture in there. And as you're squishing it, take a look at it. Have you ever looked at a raisin this hard? Do you see the different colors? We need to get you one. Dr. Snyder. Take a look at it. Do you ever remember the raisin being this soft and squishy? No? Do you feel like maybe some of them have a little stem still attached, or do you feel like maybe a little seed in there? No? I know it sounds crazy, but we're all in it together. We're going to squish the raisin. Now, our fingers are pretty tough, so I want you to put the raisin to your lip, but do not lick it. Just put it on the tip of your lip. Feel it on your lip. Is it hard? Is it soft? It's kind of soft. Now, while it's there, can you smell it? Yeah? Close your eyes so we're not distracting you. I want you to close your eyes. Can you smell it? What's happening in your mouth as you're smelling it? Ah, interesting, huh? Okay, now I'm going to challenge you. You're going to put the raisin on your tongue. You're not chewing. And you're going to squish it up against the roof of your mouth. Keep your eyes closed because I really want you to feel that texture on your tongue. Take a deep breath. Can you smell it while it's in your mouth? Maybe? Feels soft, squishy. Maybe it's a little bit more slippery. Now, the second challenge. We're going to keep our eyes closed, and I want you to chew it 25 times. It's a lot, but I want you to taste all of the flavors in there. And when you're done, you can open your eyes. So, what if we took time to actually enjoy our food this way? What if we took time to really look at what's in front of us and seeing the vibrant colors, the textures, the flavors that are about to, pop into our mouth, and really tasted everything instead of being so busy that we just shove food in our mouth and disconnect ourselves. I've done this with children who's struggling with high BMIs. They're always on the go. Their families are always on the go. And part of the struggles we're having is that a lot of the processed foods, the McDonald's, the microwaves, they're high in sodium, they're high in sugar, and so they want something that's going to trigger their brain quickly. They want that quick rush of the flavor, and then they want to move on. But then we're losing the benefits of all the other vegetables that they're not getting because it doesn't have that same quick response. So reconnecting. So my challenge to all of us, including myself, is to stop and take time. Stop and look at what you've prepared. You've worked hard to make your meals. You've worked hard to go to the grocery store and plan out and get those vibrant colors that we need to include, those grains, and play with your food. I love playing with the food. Textures, colors, combining, seeing what you can do. There's no right or wrong way to make a meal. It's what you like, but really just seeing what it is that you're missing out on and taking that time to give the respect, is what I call, the meal that you're ingesting that's going to give you those health benefits. Taking time to sit down and enjoying that, and enjoying it with somebody else and talk about it and see what flavors they enjoy. And you'll find that the lettuce starts tasting pretty darn good. So I'll let you do the cracker, and I'll pass this on to you.
Very good. So the cracker actually came from our last series that we did back in May. I asked a question when we were talking about carbohydrates. We were talking about how humans have multiple genetic copies of amylase that produce amylase in our body, and which is similar to the fruit-eating monkeys and great apes, whereas the carnivores have no amylase digesting capacity. And so I said, so what happens when you put a cracker in your mouth and you don't do anything with it? Just let it sit there. Do you know what happens to it? So we're going to do that. I'm not going to do it because I got to keep talking. But what I want you to do is I want you to just, you don't need to eat the whole cracker. Just take a piece. It doesn't have to be very big. Go ahead and put it. You can eat the whole cracker if you want. You can do that later. Put it in your mouth. Don't chew it. Don't do anything with it. Just let it sit there. And while I'm talking, when it starts to change flavor, I want you to raise your hand, and I'll stop and we'll talk about what's happening, okay? So as I was saying, the standard American diet is sad. It's really high in refined food. Thank you for the demonstration today. That was awesome. It's very high in fat, mostly containing 40 to 50%, high in simple carbohydrates, and low in fiber. And so it is not a very healthy diet. It leads to sad diseases like obesity, diabetes. So if it starts to change flavor, just put your hand up and we'll acknowledge that. Yeah, what are you feeling?
Well, half mush.
Yeah?
But salt.
Salt, okay. Anything else? Just let it sit there.
Is dissolving.
Yeah. Do you know what happens with what amylase does in your body? Do you know what it does? So we are high starch digesting creatures. And so we've been equipped with multiple copies of amylase. And if you just let that sit there, what you're going to notice is a change in the flavor. Just leave it there. I don't want you to do anything with it. Just let it sit there. Takes a couple minutes, but it will change flavor. Leads to obesity, diabetes, hypertension, coronary artery disease, osteoporosis, arthritis. Maybe wash some of that salt out of your mouth as you're letting it sit there. That will help. And it leads to forms of cancer such as breast, colon, pancreatic. Things like fibromyalgia. Yes, what are you noticing?
No taste.
No taste at all? Nothing. Okay. Well, that was a failed experiment, yes. A little bit nutty, okay, good. That's part of the way there. Maybe we needed a little bit bigger piece to put in there. We could try a bigger piece and see how it goes. Just leave it sit there. Do you know what's going to happen? Anybody? Yes. Your saltine cracker is going to turn sweet. And it will. And what that is the amylase breaking down the starch in the cracker. And so you're already beginning digestion in your mouth. And so what Yoli is showing us to take time, it actually aids in our digestion. Masticating our food, that's chewing it up 25 times, slows us down, gets the flavors out, lets us taste the food and what it really tastes like. And we begin to experience food in a more natural way, how God intended for us to taste it. So grains, as they're broken down, become sugar in our body. And so the food actually becomes sweet. So you should be feeling that. Yes? Yes. See, it happens. It tastes more like a cookie, so it's sweeter. Now, why does our body do that? Any ideas? It helps with digestion. Yes, that's the initiating process. It starts the digestive process. But our body has needs. What is the main fuel that makes our body run? Sugar. Yeah, glucose specifically. And so the body is working to turn your food into glucose because that's what the body needs to fire up. Now, what happens when we put why don't we just eat table sugar? Wouldn't that work? We could bypass everything. We could just dump a thing of sugar down and get going so we don't have to enjoy our food, right? Yeah, what happens when we do things like that? Yes, it makes us crazy. It overloads our system, and our system cannot handle those kinds of concentrated sugars. Same with fats and other macronutrients. Our bodies are built to break down plant materials into their simpler forms to produce glucose. And that's what makes our body go. And so when we keep everything in balance, our body is going to be the healthiest. So we showed you this last night. We were looking at the rates of obesity in the United States between 1990 and 2005 and how there was such a great increase of obesity. You remember talking about that? And I threw this slide in tonight for you to see that during a similar time period, as the obesity rates increased, so did the diabetes rates. Funny that as obesity goes up, we see the same trend with heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and even cancers. Here in 2020, the obesity rates now, we see places where it's over 40%. And so as Americans now, I think the most recent one I saw is almost 41% of Americans are obese. So there's an epidemic of obesity and lifestyle disease. It's on the rise. They go hand in hand. In a surveillance study where we looked at people with diabetes, hypertension, obesity, osteoporosis, and constipation, we looked at these groups of people, and what we wanted to see was how many of these people can we make better by treating them the way that we typically do, go to the doctor, you get your pills, and so on and so forth. So any ideas when we look at this, over 2 years, the regimens with medications, not one single person reversed their disease, not one. So when you get sick, you go see your doctor, you're going to get a medicine, but you're not going to get better. We can treat the symptoms, knock those down, make you more comfortable, make you more happy, but we're not reversing your disease. So there are over 330 million sick people in the United States. And you're probably doing a little bit of math in your head right now saying, wait a minute, there's only about 330, maybe it's 340 million now. The United States is growing pretty fast these days. But to prove it, almost all people over 30 years of age are overweight, and a large portion of these, 37, I just told you, I need to update this slide, it's almost 41% of Americans are obese now. And so overweight and obesity are considered disease processes in the United States as part of the disease. And so almost everybody over 30 years old is overweight. They're sick. They don't know they're sick, but they're sick. So this increases the risk for lifestyle diseases such as the diabetes, heart disease, and so forth. And it all starts at birth. In the United States, we tend to be against breastfeeding, although in some places it's becoming more popular among some people, some communities. It's really popular. The baby formula, when we give a baby formula, instead of breastfeeding them, they are at 60 times the risk of pneumonia, especially in the first year of life, 2 to 4 times the risk of sudden infant death syndrome, 10-fold increase in hospitalization in that first year of life, lower IQ scores by an average of 10 points. That's a lot. 10 points is a lot. Behavior and speech difficulties are increased, an increased risk of infections, eczema, asthma, and type 1 diabetes. So Time Magazine did a spread on this called Our Supersized Kids, and they looked at study after study after study after study, and they came to an interesting conclusion. They said, it's not just genetics, but diet, lifestyle is contributing to this obesity epidemic. I trace it back to the 1970s, when our government told us that red meat was so unhealthy for us and that white meat was very healthy. And what happened at that time, the average American went from eating 4 ounces of meat to 10 ounces of meat in its place. Now, when we're going to look at the caloric density of the foods, when you're thinking about that much meat and the caloric increase that comes along with such an increase in the rate of meat eating, you will see that this is really obvious. Other people have traced it back to the increased use of things like corn syrup and stuff like that. But again, processed and refined food. So CDC named consequences of childhood obesity: more immediate health risks, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. There are risk factors for cardiovascular disease, increased risks of impaired glucose tolerance, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, breathing problems such as asthma and sleep apnea. Interesting that all of these things go hand in hand, but that's the outcome of childhood obesity. And this was published in 2016, and you can find it at the CDC government website. So in a recent study by pathologists, they looked at obese children, and they are more and more being found to have arteries of adults. Why is that consequential? Any ideas? The elasticity in the arteries goes away. So as we become older, our arteries harden. Why would children, they haven't even completed their growing, and they're already starting to have hardening of the arteries? That's unbelievable. So 32% of all American kids are overweight. 90% of these kids have avoidable risk factors for heart disease. And the interesting thing, when we start looking at per capita caloric intake in the United States, we average 3,800 calories per person per day. Caloric intake. Now, I don't know about you, but I probably eat closer to 1,800 calories a day. I can't eat that much. That's crazy. Our government tells us that we need about 2,350 calories. And I think if I ate that much, I'd definitely be on the heavy side. So the skinniest state in the United States is Utah at 21%. The heaviest state is Washington. I know it's more than 42%. These are older statistics. They're probably 4 or 5 years old now. So what I want to look at, and this is really the bulk of the lecture tonight, if you can understand this point that I'm going to make, you have a key that will unlock the secret to good health and optimum weight. And so the question is asked, is it true? Is it true that obese people eat too much? Is that true? And so that's the question I'd like to explore, because that's the stigma that our society put on people that were overweight for decades. They saw somebody who was really heavy, because heavy people weren't as common when I was a little kid, and they would Well, they just eat too much. And so that kind of thinking is kind of ingrained into our society, and I want you to start thinking a little bit different. There's over 2 million species on Earth. There's only 3 that have a weight problem. Do you know what those are? Say it loud. Elephants? No, they don't have a weight problem. They're just the way they were created. People.
And their dogs and their cats.
Yes, people, dogs, and cats. You were probably here before, but that's exactly right. Humans, dogs, and cats. What do they have in common? Humans. They're all fed by humans. And so they all have problems with their weight. Other species, think of giraffes, elephants, whatever, they don't have to eat less to maintain their weight. They don't even think about what they eat. They eat what they've been created to eat. And so does the eat less exercise strategy work? Are there any doctors here? Yeah, Dr. Norman, but you're a dentist. How many times do you tell your patients that you should eat less and exercise more? Have you ever had to do that? Yeah, I do it all the time. And usually when there's a doctor around, they do it too. And I ask them, how does this work? Does this strategy work? And no, it doesn't. It does not work. Sometimes people will eat less and exercise more, but eventually they stop eating less and they stop exercising, and their weight goes up even higher than what it was before. So animals, on the other hand, eating to their full satisfaction. What is that? Your full satisfaction. You sit down, you eat a beautiful meal, you're mindful about it, you take your time. That's the other thing about what Yoli was presenting. When we take our time, the stomach has time to communicate with the brain. We often eat so fast, we overfill our stomach before the brain even gets the signal that we're full. And so we slow down, we enjoy our food, the signal comes in a timely manner, and we eat 4/5 of a plate instead of a whole plate, right?
Don't we also drink with our meals where the animals don't? Drink after or before?
We do that as well, and that inhibits our digestion, but that's a whole nother lecture. But animals eating to their full satisfaction in their natural environment or in their niche will over time eat neither too much or too little for optimal health. They're hardwired to eat what they eat what they're supposed to eat, and they don't have to think about, I'm getting a little chubby around the middle, I better cut back. They don't think about things like that. They don't have to. So, this is an old slide. This one's 5 years old. So in physiology studies, in 59 years, actually make it 64 years, and we'll change what I have eaten. I have eaten about 64,000 pounds of food. Yeah, in 64 years. About 1,000 pounds a year is, you can go to any physiology book, and this is common knowledge. The question is asked, if I were 1% short, so 1% of 64,000 pounds, that's about 640 pounds of food. What would that mean for me? I would be seriously malnourished. 640 pounds over a lifetime. It's hard to believe, but it's true. Go to a physiology book, do your studies, understand. If I were 1% over this, what would it mean? 640 pounds too much. What would that mean? I'd probably be about 60 pounds overweight. So we have a very narrow physiological range in which we're hardwired to eat. So if we were to eat just like the elephant, just like the giraffe, just like the squirrels, what we're designed to eat to our full satisfaction, we would have perfect body weights. We wouldn't have a problem with our weight. So how is this engineered? How did this happen? Natural mechanisms God built into our hardwiring. The Bible says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And so God made it this way. Physiologically, the body weighs the amount of food that's in the gut by stretch receptors. So when you go into the gut, whether it's the stomach or intestines, the large or small, doesn't matter. There are stretch receptors through the whole gut. And so as these stretch out, it tells the body, the brain, that you've got so much food in there. So your body is always doing an analysis on the mass of the food that's in there. It also has nutrition receptors, and these nutrition receptors are picking up the nutrients that are in the food, and either one of these receptors can tell the brain you've eaten enough, you haven't eaten enough. So they're both volumetric and nutrient receptors. So if we were to look at this, they perform a gut content and weighing and calorie analysis. So this would be like a cross section of the gut right here, this round circle. The N's represent nutrient receptors, the S's stretch receptors. And so you put food in there, and I just chose a number, 500 calories. It could be 800, it could be whatever, but whatever your body would need, you could plug that number in there. And assuming that it was 500 calories, that's what you needed, your body eaten, properly chewed in a slow, mindful manner, the stomach would tell the brain, you've got enough in here. The brain would say, you're full, you can stop eating now. Thank you very much. So when we think about that, we'll use an example of an apple. An apple is 5/6 fiber and water. So how many calories are in fiber and water? 0. That's right, exactly right. So 1/6 of them are carbs, and carbs are weighed at 1,800 calories per pound, so that's 300 calories in a pound of apples. So if the apple weighs a half a pound, then you're getting about 150 calories from the apple. So if you needed 500, what is your gut going to say? You're not full yet, you need to eat a little bit more. So it's weighing it out, and it's looking at the nutrition in that apple, telling us we need a little more nutrition. So about 350 more calories to be satiated. So before you tell me, well, what if I have a thyroid problem? Well, only about 1% of people with any kind of weight problem has a thyroid problem. So that means 99 out of 100 people do not. So we're having some other issue with our food supply or our caloric intake, the refined food, whatever it might be, is what's causing the problem. So I wanted to do a comparison side by side. What about the person that has this body habitus versus the person that has this body habitus? What's the difference? How could we account for that difference? Gut receptors, nutrients, stretch receptors, these kind of things. Is there a difference in there? Physiologically, is there something different between these two people? So we would say, let's call this person normal. They have a normal in terms of receptors. They have a normal amount of nutrition receptors, a normal amount of stretch receptors, and they eat their 500 calories, and the body says, thank you very much, you really don't need to eat any more. But what if we had somebody who had less nutrient receptors and less stretch receptors? And so when they ate 500 calories of food, it's measured as 400 or 350 calories. And the body says, you really need some more food. You haven't eaten enough. Is that a possibility? Is that something that could really be happening here? And turns out there's a genetic predisposition to obesity, and one of the things that accounts for this is the number of stretch and nutrient receptors. So you're saying, great, I don't have enough nutrient and stretch receptors, so I'm doomed. I can't fix this. But remember, Lamont Murdoch said that genetics loads the gun, and what? Lifestyle pulls the trigger, right? So is there something we can do about this? So what we know in Western worlds, our food has become highly processed. You go to the grocery store, and when you're walking around a grocery store, what percentage of the grocery store actually has food in it versus those things in the grocery store that are processed, refined, packaged, boxed, jarred, etc., etc., etc. And where do you find those items? So in the middle of the store, you go up and down the items, they're all packaged, boxed, jars, cans, whatever. And the nutrition is gone out of those foods mostly. There's not much nutrition in them. They don't have very much fiber. They are low nutrition, they're high in calories, and they don't have any fiber in it. I should put that in there as well. And all in a little compact little snack. So you can eat a lot of it. Get lots of calories with no nutrition. That's basically what you're looking at. So food that has nutrition, you typically find kind of on the outside of the grocery store. And so when you go to the grocery store, except to get maybe your laundry detergent or something, you don't need to go down the other aisles. You just go around this, make your circle, and you're done. You get out of the store. Processed foods understretch the gut. People are not eating too much. They are eating too many calories. So that's the answer. Are people eating too much? They're eating too many calories. Too many calories. Now, we could point a lot of fingers at a lot of different places, lobbying groups, dairy industries, even the soybean manufacturers who take the soybean and they destroy it. They take the protein out, they take the oil out, they take the fiber out, and they make frankenfoods out of it, all those kinds of things. So these are the kind of reasons why we're getting too many calories. Our food is too processed. So I wanted to take a look at the caloric density of some common foods that we see in our society. And so everything falls between fiber and water all the way over on the left-hand side over there. Remember, we decided those 0 calories per pound. And oil, which is over here on the right-hand side at 4,000 calories per pound. All the rest of the foods in the world fall between them. And so before we get into a debate about oil, what is the best oil, corn oil or canola oil or olive oil, it doesn't really matter what kind of oil you choose. All oils have 4,000 calories per pound. Whether it's motor oil or corn oil or whatever, it's 4,000 calories per pound. And so everything else is in between. So when we start looking at plant-based foods, where do we see them? They're all the way over there on the left-hand side. We have our salad, our vegetables, our fruits, our whole grains. Notice that they have very low caloric densities versus things that are meats and processed foods like bread, flour, sugar, cookies, chips, nuts, puddings, custards. So as we eat these more highly processed and refined foods, the caloric density goes up. So just to clarify, caloric density is the number of calories in a pound. So if we eat a pound of oil, it's 4,000. If we eat a pound of sugar, it's 1,800 calories. If we eat a pound of lettuce, it's 100 calories. So there's a huge difference between the caloric density. And you think about your stomach is about yay big. So we could put a pound of oil in there, 4,000 calories, or we could probably maybe fit a half a pound of salad in there, about 50 calories. So the food choices we make and what we decide to fill our stomach with will determine the caloric densities of what we're eating. And that ultimately will determine our optimum weight. If we eat the way our bodies are designed, remember in the beginning how it was? We were giving the seeds from the herbs. We were given everything that grew on a tree. That would be fruits and nuts. So fruits, nuts, and grains were our original diet. When sin came in, the vegetables themselves were added. All plant-based. All over here on this side of the chart. All leading to optimal weight, slender bodies, and good nutrition with a healthful lifestyle. So any questions about this before we move on? Do you understand this chart? This is an important chart. Okay, good. So ever hear the olive oil diet? So that's the diet where you often hear about it, famous movie stars, they go in, they eat off the salad bar, and you get to the end of the salad bar. What's at the end of the salad bar? The dressings, the olive oil. And so you take your 75 or 100 calorie plate, beautiful salad with all the colors and everything, and you take the olive oil or the dressing and you just drizzle that all over, and you just turned your 100 calories into 600 or 800 calories, just like that. And so people come to me all the time and they tell me, well, I'm only eating salads. I eat broccoli. You know, how can that? Well, what do we put on that? Are we using things like olive oil? Are we using things like salad dressings? So anyway, going on, concentrated foods do affect people with different types of fat genes. So what we did was we broke our genetic dispositions down into kind of a normal average genes. People that have skinny genes, these are those people that you know, they're really thin, they can eat tons of food, anything under the sun, and they never gain an ounce. And you hate those people. And then you have these people here who they come and they tell me they're in tears, crying, I don't eat anything, and you know, they're really big. And so it's not fun, and it's very frustrating. And the stigma that goes with these poor folks is that, oh, you're just a glutton. You eat too much. But what we've discovered tonight is that that's not the case at all. We're eating too many calories, and we just need to adjust what we eat. And so when we look at this chart more carefully, we see our weight goes up on this side, this axis, and the caloric density gets higher on this axis. So when we have people that have average genes, they can kind of eat this medium to high caloric and maintain this kind of low to medium weight. So it's kind of average. Whereas these poor people, if they eat that same, they're going to have a high weight. And so they need to make an adjustment here on their caloric density of the foods that they eat. So if they want to be at a medium-low weight, what are they going to have to do? They have to eat less calorically dense foods. And these people, I guess you might consider them lucky. They can just eat anything. But I still recommend the plant-based diet for them because while they may not have obesity, they're going to have some other predisposition genetically, cancers or things like that. And these same foods that help make people obese also lead to an increased rate of cancer and heart disease, high blood pressure, and things like that. So I believe in universal health care, a vegan diet for everyone, okay? Studies have shown that if the United States every citizen in the United States would become a vegan, we would have 3 to 7% of the lifestyle diseases that we currently have. Could you imagine what that would do to our major healthcare providers, our major systems like Sutter Health, Baptist Health, Catholic Health, Adventist Health, Kaiser Permanente? They wouldn't have any business. Most of these places would go out of business. We wouldn't have a need for them. So I shared this from the Permanente Journal, this from Kaiser. So looking at healthy eating may be best achieved with a plant-based diet, which we define as a regimen that encourages whole plant-based foods and discourages meat, dairy products, eggs, as well as refined and processed foods. And they go on to present case studies based on that. When I teach health in my own office, I oftentimes will sit down with the patient and show them the difference between the standard American diet or Western diet and a vegan diet. It's interesting that the Western diet is more than 40% fat, whereas in the vegan world, it's 10 to 20% fat. It's made up in the Western diet of mostly animal products, where the vegan has no animal products. So if it has a face or a mother, or it comes from something that has a face or a mother, we should avoid that. We shouldn't be eating those foods. And what's really interesting, because of the fiber content in the foods in the vegan diet, when you eat 2,000 calories of the Western diet, your body is so efficient in breaking down the nutrients that you'll actually absorb about 1,950 of those calories into your body. Whereas with the vegan diet, so high in fiber, the nutrients are latched onto the fiber so tightly that you're only going to absorb about 75 to 85% of those calories, meaning you're only going to absorb about 15 to 1700. So just right there, you can see a huge advantage in how you eat and the calories that are absorbed. Oftentimes with the Western diet, your cholesterol is well over 200, whereas with the vegan diet, it's 130 or less. So mine tends to run about 120, 130. I know people that have it down around 75, and so they're more strict than I am. These predisposes you, of course, to all the lifestyle diseases we've talked about: diabetes, high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, obesity, cancer, autoimmune disorders. Whereas in the vegan group, these diseases are almost absent, and you can expect to live anywhere from 6 to 15 years longer, not just a longer life, but healthier and happier and productive through those years. So vegan diet for weight loss, in the British Medical Journal in 2014 published this study showing how it lowers your bad cholesterol and shows lower weights in people that use vegan versus those that don't. So, Counsels in Diets and Foods, written by Ellen G. White. She says in there, and we talked a little bit about her last night, how she is an authority on health and how many places like Cornell and other places recognize her as a world authority on health guidelines. She says those who indulge in meat eating, tea drinking, and gluttony are sowing seeds for a harvest of pain and death. The unhealthful food placed in the stomach strengthens the appetite that wars against the soul, developing the lower propensities. A diet of flesh meats tends to develop animalism. A development of animalism lessens spirituality, rendering the mind incapable of understanding truths. And so when we think about that, there is a wonderful study that's been done by some of our Adventist, Seventh-day Adventist brethren, where they were looking at prison populations and those that were fed vegetarian diets versus those that were fed standard American diets, and the gigantic behavioral changes that happened in those prisons. And so we see that rate of animalism, that aggressive behavior, is reduced with vegetarian eating. So the question I get most often is, where do you get your what? Protein, yeah. So where does this guy get his protein? Is he really overweight? Really? Now, where does he get his protein? That's a lot of protein standing right there. He gets it all from leaves and grass. How can he do that? It's the same way we can. We eat the way we're designed. Our body makes the proteins we need. Are there proteins in leaves and grass? Yeah, sure. It's just not a concentrated protein. What happens to our kidneys when we eat concentrated proteins? They blow up. Our kidneys go bad. And so Dr. Atkins, who was the Atkins diet author, what did he die from? Coronary artery disease and kidney failure. Why? Because he ate all that protein. So tips: eat your salads first, your veggies second. Think about that chart I had up there, the graph. What's over on the far side over there? The veggies, the salad. Eat your carbs, concentrated carbs next. Now, concentrated carbs, this is not simple carbohydrates. This is complex carbohydrates. Where do we get complex carbohydrates? Grains, beans, great places to get them. So nuts last. Why? High calories, more concentrated, high fat content. So the idea here is to eat the foods that take up the space first, and then put the kind of more calorically dense foods in last. Avoid the analog meats. What are analog meats? Fake meats, yes. So like the fake steak and phony bologna and sham ham and all that kind of good stuff. So you should avoid those. Those are highly processed foods that add a lot of calories and fat and not much nutrition. So they're really not that good for us. So don't eat any meat, dairy, packaged foods. So I showed you this last night. So I already talked about this slide, but this is that cholesterol study where they took people with high cholesterol. They gave them the exact same diet, except in the animal protein group, they gave them casein as the protein, and in the vegetable protein group, they gave them soy protein, and they measured their cholesterol 3 and 6 weeks later. 3 weeks later, we saw a very significant drop, 70 points or so in the cholesterol versus 30 points or so in the animal protein. And this is just protein. This is not looking at fat or cholesterol or anything like that. It's just protein. And so when we add animal protein to our diet, it does something to our chemistries in our body that prevents us from packaging the cholesterol and shipping it out of our body. And that's the difference between good and bad cholesterol. Good cholesterol is cholesterol that's been packaged up to be shipped out of the body. We're going to get rid of it. Bad cholesterol is the cholesterol that hasn't been packaged up, and it's going to hang around. And when it hangs around, what does it do? That's a whole nother lecture, which we will get to, but it coats our arteries and leads to hardening of the arteries and arteriosclerosis. So just to be fair, to make sure there was no genetic advantage, they switched the diets in the group. The vegetable protein became animal protein diet and vice versa. After 6 weeks, these guys 110-point loss. These guys about 30, 40 points. So it does make a big difference. People say, well, you can't get your essential amino acids from a plant-based diet. I beg to differ with you. If you eat a well-balanced diet, eat a rainbow, lots of colors, you're going to get all the essential amino acids you need. And there actually is a place like this. It's called Murder Burger. It's found in Sacramento. And their slogan is, so good, they're to die for, which is a truth, right? Yeah. So the problem is animal protein content. The SAD diet's too high in protein. Concentrated protein leads to all these things: diabetes, renal failure, osteoporosis, promotes atherosclerosis, and heart disease by causing higher cholesterol levels. And if you read the book, The China Study, how many of you, have you ever read The China Study? It's a great book. If you haven't read it, you should get it by Dr. T. Colin Campbell. It leads to, this high animal protein leads to cancers. So a lot of people shop here, but the Adventist study shows that people that use meat, especially more 6 days or more a week, are almost 4 times the risk of early death compared to those that eat it once or less. So you should shop here instead. Look at the colors, it's beautiful. Take time, put it in your mouth, feel the texture, let it dissolve, enjoy the flavors that are there. So the color of food really matters. The Western diet is very brown, very basic, meats and grains. And if I could give you one piece of advice tonight, abandon meat, flour, and sugar, eat a plant-based diet, which is very colorful, fruits, nuts, vegetables, and grains. So lots of antioxidants. So remember, in the beginning, that's the way it was. God made us to eat a plant-based diet. Any questions? Yes, please.
Genesis 9:3.
Yes.
Did God change the diet that was in the beginning after the flood? I can't reconcile the two.
Yeah. We should have a little talk about that afterwards, and I'll sit and go over that with you. But it's a great question. When I'm sitting in front of church groups, I get that a lot, and I do answer that a lot. And the bottom line is that he allowed people to begin to eat meat, but if you read carefully in the entire text and context, it says, for their blood I will require your blood. And so was that really permission to eat meat? Not really, and maybe a permission, but certainly not what God intended for us to do. So, yes?
On the rainbow, do you need to eat a rainbow on every meal, or every day, or every week, or every couple of days, or what?
Yeah, so the idea is to try to get as many different colors on your plate at every meal. And so I showed you the color wheel last night. I'll show it again sometime before this seminar is over. But the idea is to eat from each one of those colors at least once a day. And so as we put many different colors on our plate, the odds are we're going to get all of the colors we need. And we're going to have a wide variety of bioavailable carotenoids in our diet, which are going to lead to great nutrition and good health. And boosting our immune system, that's what we talked about last night. So, good question. Yes, Tom?
What about mixing like fruits and vegetables together? I've heard something about not doing that.
Yeah, so some people will advocate that, and you can actually find places, if you read Ellen White, she has some guidelines about eating fruits and vegetables, but you'll find that it's always in the context of people that have what she called dyspepsia. And so people that have a sensitive gut, that have problems, you may find, you probably will find that if you stop mixing fruits and vegetables at a meal, a lot of those problems settle down and don't give you so much trouble. So is it an ironclad rule? No. I eat fruits and vegetables in salads all the time. I have salad with apple and raisins and other good things in it. So tomatoes, lettuce and tomatoes, that's a fruit and a vegetable right there. So yeah, and avocado. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes?
Calcium.
Calcium.
Some people say you can't get enough without your dairy.
Yeah.
I think it's back to the elephant, those big bones and stuff.
Yeah.
comes right out of the green.
Well, he's not out there chugging gallons of milk, is he? You know, the facts are that only 25% of the calcium in milk is bioavailable. So you can't even absorb all of that. And there's so much phosphorus in the milk that it actually ends up leaching calcium out of your bones. So you get a net loss of calcium from your bones every time you drink a glass of milk. And a much better way to get it is your leafy greens, your broccolis, things that are high in calcium from the plant world. It's all bioavailable, and it doesn't leach your bones. So, yes?
I remember reading where spinach, if you eat it raw, it adds calcium to your bones. But that if you cook it, it leaches the calcium from your bones. Is that true, or?
I have not seen that study. I'm not sure if that's true or not, so I can't really answer that, but I know that from my studies and the things that I've read, I haven't found any plant foods that really leach calcium out of the bones. So the chemistry isn't there. So I'm not sure about that. I'd like to see that study. Okay? Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about supplementation. Like, do you recommend supplements for vegans?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Get that a lot as well. So what I recommend for my patients, if you're a strict vegan, whole plant food, I do recommend two things. I recommend a vitamin B12, and I think you should take, probably at least 100 micrograms a week. One of our famous Adventists, the name is just escaping me right now, but he did a lot of work. He was at Weimar a long time ago, and he did a lot of research on B12, and he came to the conclusion we need about 4 or 5 micrograms a day, which is about what you would get if you had organic apples and you don't wash them all the biofilm off of it, and you eat that apple. You're going to get enough B12 from the apple. And so problem today, you go to the grocery store, what happened to all the apples? They're all polished and waxed, and so you don't get that B12 anymore. So for safety's sake, I just recommend about 100 micrograms a week or so. So I take a B12 every week just to be safe. But most of the foods now that you get, if there's any processing done, most of them have been augmented now, so it's not hard to get B12 anymore. So
Is there only one supplement that you recommend?
that is the main one. In our area here, I do recommend vitamin D, and that's because it's a sunlight problem. And so the angle of the sun does not allow us to absorb as much sun to make vitamin D as we would need. So Usually 1,000 or 2,000 units of vitamin D a day is adequate. So, okay. And if you have any vitamin deficiencies, you should replace those. So, yes.
What about nightshade vegetables? I read that there's, maybe you should avoid them, the zucchini or tomatoes and so forth, or is that just for individuals that might also have gut issues?
So there are some people that have food sensitivities that might need to avoid nightshades, but overall, there is no health detriment to eating nightshades. If you're a healthy individual, eat them, enjoy them. They're going to just give you all kinds of nutrition. Like tomatoes, they're full of lycopenes, and for men, that concentrates in the prostate, brings better prostate health. And so all these different, we talked a little bit about it last night, but all these different carotenoids focus on different parts of the body, and they concentrate there. And so they tend to bring health to those organs in the body. So, yes. Let's go in the back, and then we'll go over here.
Some dairy products, they say fat-free.
Yes. And
Yeah, so
the question is, yeah, they do, but are they protein-free? So what they've done is they take all the fat out of there, and what do you have left? Yeah, you have this milky, icky, yeah. So they got to put something back in it to make it kind of thick and tasty again. So they just add more casein, more of the milk protein back in. We already have too much protein in our diet. That's why most Americans are sick. And so then you get a food like that, you take the fat out, you increase the protein, now you're really getting a double whammy because you're getting a huge concentration of protein, which eventually are going to knock your kidneys out and promote heart disease anyway.
and my cancer doctor even told me milk is not good for you.
Yeah, no, it is not. It is a very bad food. I wouldn't really even define it as food, but people know it that way, so that's what we talk about. Yes?
Generally, I've heard that vegetables are better for you raw, but I've noticed, especially your green leafy vegetables and your snow peas, if you very lightly steam them, it makes them look so much brighter and more appetizing. And in order to entice people who come to like church potluck to eat their veggies, I like to steam them, and I never throw away any of the steamed water. I love to drink it myself. That's my at-home cocktail. It's not the best pastor, that's a cocktail. So what's your counsel? Should we only really have raw vegetables, or these lightly steamed ones, should they be added to a salad to brighten it up and get those people to eat their salads at potluck?
Yeah. So this is a great question. So there's several questions in this question. So let's go with the simple one. The simple one is that if I have to cook my vegetables to get people to become a vegetarian, I'm cooking them for them, irregardless of what I feel about raw, cooked, or whatever. There are many studies out there now, we'll go on to the next part, many studies out there that are showing that, we'll use tomatoes as an example, but there's many others now, that when you cook it, the lycopene concentration in the blood goes up from cooking it rather than eating them raw. So they've done head-to-head studies showing that. That's not true of every fruit or vegetable, but in many cases it is. So cooking doesn't seem to have a detriment in some cases. Third, getting a little bit more complex. So when we're talking about disease states, there are case after case after case that I've encountered in my career in medical missionary work where people that eat raw diets recover from cancer better than those that don't. But we're talking about a disease state. Now, did they get cancer because they cooked their veggies? No, they got cancer for some other reason. We put them on a vegetarian diet and we tweaked the diet to raw because that's what they needed to get well. And so we might juice, we might raw, but that's what it takes sometimes to make people well again. So there's kind of different facets to that question. And my personal preferences would include, as a vegan, I eat an awful lot of raw food anyway, just because I'm a vegan. And it's just kind of natural. I eat a lot of fruit, a lot of veggies. I just eat stuff, you know, and they're raw. I don't cook them. But I sit down and cook a meal for my family. I love to cook food, and I love to cook. And I love to experiment with food to see, because there's no wrong. The only wrong when you put the wrong foods together is when it tastes bad. Okay? Otherwise, there is no wrong. You can just experiment and enjoy the science of cooking. It's wonderful. So, okay? Does that answer that? Yes. Any other questions? Yes, please.
You already have thyroid problems like my giant goiters. Is there a way to reverse it with diet, or is it too late?
I have seen people that come, immigrants that come from overseas, that come into the United States, that start getting foods that are supplemented and full vitamins and not being deficient anymore, that have reversed their goiters somewhat. But it's something we watch their whole life. They always have it. And so the answer to that is maybe, definitely maybe. But I think I'd be remiss to stand up here and blow false hope at you and tell you, yeah, if you eat this way, this goiter is going to go away, because that wouldn't be fair to you, and it's not something that I could really guarantee. So, first of all, I don't know what caused it, why you have the goiter, and so that's worth investigating.
How would you find that out?
Your doctor can do some tests, help you understand why you have a goiter. Okay? Yeah.
What about when someone likes to work out and the trainer is encouraging more protein,
Oh,
to
yeah.
work out?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
So, you know, that is a big deal, and I can't tell you how many bodybuilders I've had in my career that have kidney failure because of that. And so it's just not a safe thing to do. I know vegan bodybuilders that look just as good, and they don't eat all that protein, and they don't need to. You don't need to do that. So the nutrition in the food is really what helps the body build the muscle mass, and along with the exercise, of course. But yes, Pastor.
On that point, the world's strongest man, he's a bodybuilder. He is a vegan.
Yeah.
And you can see him on the documentary Game Changers.
Excellent.
By Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is now
Vegan as well, yes. And I think of like Tony Gonzalez, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs for 10 years, just an average football player. During the off season between his 10th and 11th year, he became vegan and became all-pro his next season. So it is really transformative. And he will testify. You could look up YouTube, his video, and you'll be inspired to see the transformation that happened to him.
athletes in the world today are vegan.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, more and more and more. When I went to Weimar and trained, there were heads of state, police chiefs, Congress people, and elite athletes that come there. And so they go there for a reason. So, yes.
Just a question about the vegan protein powder. Do we need it?
Vegan protein powder? No, you don't need that. What do you need that for?
Like if someone will make a smoothie and they're now, instead of selling, whey protein for the vegan market, for the vegan population, they're making plant-based protein powder.
So that just circles back to the question we just had about the bodybuilder. You know, that concentrated protein is not good for us, whether it's plant or animal based. It's just not safe to do that. And so the strategy that why people do that is to try to induce ketosis for weight loss purposes. But, you know, if you're just making a shake out of fruits and maybe some veggies, you don't need to do that. There's not very many calories in there to start with, so. I personally can't do that. I can't eat fruit smoothies and drink juices all the time because my triglycerides go sky high and then my cholesterol goes up. And so I have a genetic disposition that predisposes me to high cholesterol, heart disease, and hypertension. That's what runs in my family. And I have found that by avoiding the fruit juices and not putting too much of the fruit smoothies in my body, I can keep my triglycerides down around 100 or less, and that keeps my cholesterol down below 130. So, yes, Catherine.
Do we need more iron instead of protein?
Iron instead of protein. Iron is a nutrient that we need, and so if you're eating a well-balanced diet, lots of colors, you're getting plenty of iron in your foods. If you want a great iron source, how about those wonderful raisins we had? They're high in iron. Dried apricots, another source. So if you were at the granola cooking class that I did, I gave you the omega-3 granola. It's also very high in iron, so it's a good source of iron. So, any other questions? Yes?
Not a question, but about, last morning I decided I was going to eat vegetables and salad, specifically salad. And I lost 5 pounds in about 10 days. And what I found is that I used to like to kind of feel hungry after maybe 8 or 9 o'clock, and I would eat something. After I started eating that, I wasn't hungry whatsoever.
Yeah.
I was full and satisfied during the day. And, I wanted to see how Daniel did with 10 days. But it really works. It's a wonderful thing for us.
It's interesting to think about Daniel. After 10 days, his countenance was, what was it, 10 times better than everybody else's. But my theory is he's already vegetarian. He's already eating strictly. He probably didn't change. It was probably his colleagues around him eating the king's diet who their countenances kind of fell. So.
When we were young, of course, we ate what we produced. There were no chemicals or anything. And we lived in the higher part of Panama, and we would go to the warmer climate. Everybody asked, how come you're so nice and rosy?
Yeah, yeah,
Because we got fresh air, fresh food.
yeah.
And I went back home before the Kentucky Fried Chicken, the pizzas and all the stuff went. And I was looking up, girls go by, and I said to my sister, oh, people are getting so heavy nowadays. And she said, because of all that fast food they are eating.
Yeah. So along those same lines, we went to Arizona State University Health Center for a seminar, and they preach Mediterranean diet there, but I forget, Dr. Weil is in charge of that facility, and so he's a wonderful chef and prepares great food, but it's Mediterranean, and so there's always some little piece of fish on the dish, but otherwise very vegan, very nice food. And it was amazing to me, my wife and I, we went together, and how many comments we got from people that are actively involved in their program telling us, what beautiful skin you guys have. What do you do? And so we don't eat Mediterranean, we eat vegan. So, all right, any others? It started to get late, so I don't want to keep anybody, but I do want to answer all the questions, so. All right, awesome. You guys have been great tonight. Thank you for being here. We will continue our series tomorrow evening, and we will move on more into things. So we talked a little bit about diabetes and obesity tonight. We'll look more at hypertension and heart disease tomorrow. And I'm thinking about maybe doing cancer. I would like to address maybe some depression. So we'll either try to fit that in maybe tomorrow or into our next series. So, okay? All right, have a good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here.